Hello class, this is the last video for this particular drawing. I have up on screen the finished version pretty much of what you're going to do, and the last thing we're going to do is this title block. It's actually not a lot of drawing because it's already there in the template that you should be using from when we first started, but there are some changes we need to make, some little details that are very important that we need to go over. So to do that, I'm going to pull back out to AutoCAD here. So this is the drawing, and I'm sure we go over these things in lecture, but this thing, we see these tab down here, it's called model. This is our model space. We draw in full scale. It's the house. It's where all our documentation of the rest of the house is going to be. But the assignment is a piece of paper, and obviously a house doesn't fit on the piece of paper. So AutoCAD, they do these things they call layout. These are these other tabs here, and if you click on this 11 by 17 landscape, we preloaded in for you the title block as we've seen for you, and so this is sized to the correct size for the assignment. Now there's this little red line here that I'm going to click on right here that you see, and you don't see that in the finished drawing because it's set to not print, which is key. But this little red line is in AutoCAD. It's called the viewport, and the viewport allows you to show something from model space onto your piece of paper. So this piece of paper really is 11 by 17, so I have to put a scaled down version of my house. And so I'm going to double click inside of that, and we can see that red line actually became thicker. That means it's activated. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out, and you can see if I zoom out, I can find my house. It's right over here. Alternatively, if I double click on my scroll wheel, it'll zoom in, and so you can see my floor plan. It's fitting right on here on this piece of paper. However, while it's fitting, it's not the right scale, because in architecture or other similar construction and engineering, we want these things to be at specific scales. There are only certain scales that architects use. They come from the scale or the ruler that we tend to use, and we want to use one of those. And so you can set that real easily. AutoCAD makes it pretty easy. It's similar. Remember when we were doing the text, I said check out the scale down here? Well, that made it so that the text will read correctly at scale, but I also have to set it here again. And every time I run a new drawing in this, I'm going to have to do the same thing. So when I hit this little button, and I need to go to 3/16, and it'll zoom right in, and we see the text appears because in model space it said, hey, this text is associated with this scale. So we see it wasn't there in the last shot, but it is now. Alternatively, a lot of times people accidentally miss zoom like I just did. You can tell if you miss zoom. You can see down here the numbers aren't correct. Make sure when you are done, this says 3/16. It is vitally important. You will not get credit for the drawing if it does not say 3/16. If it's a little off-centered like this, I'm just going to carefully push down on my center scroll wheel and pan it into place, making sure not to misscale it. And I've got this drawing set up. Now I want to change some of this text over here. Right now I'm activated in the viewport, so I can't change this text. I actually want to move way over off to the side and double click way off to the side in this gray zone. We can see I've unactivated the viewport, and it is no longer highlighted red. If I tried to do that, because what I want to do is I want to zoom now, and if I tried to zoom, it would get thrown off here if I didn't deactivate that. So the last thing is we'll just fill in a couple pieces of this information. This class is 110. We're not going to change that. We're good to go. SUNY Delhi, that's where we are. Good to go. Up here, assignment name. Well, we'll double click on this piece of text. It'll rotate it for us so we can see it, and we're going to call it first floor plan. Again, if you haven't done so, make sure your cap locks is on, because we always do all caps in architecture. Do that. Double click on your name and type in your own name. Obviously everyone's is going to be different, so I don't need to show that. Do scale. Well, I'm going to change it from as noted to 3/16, so I'm going to double click inside here. I actually want to keep the word scale, so I'm only going to select over the as noted part and type in 3/16 inch mark. And if it makes it I know it's probably hard to see on screen, but if it makes it a fraction, that is fine. I'm going to do a space and then the equal sign, another space, and then I want the full 1 foot dash 0 inches. That's all I'll accept as correct. And when I set it, you can see, right? So this is exactly what this line needs to say. Otherwise, I'll ask you to correct it. Select a due date. That's going to be different for each lab, whatever the case might be. Put it in correctly. In the lab CRN, look up your CRN. Again, that's going to be a 5-digit number that is different for every class. Look yours up, ask your professor, whatever the case might be. Put it in there so we can keep that straight. So do, again, change these two. Again, if those are not correct, I will send this back to you to correct. And then last but not least, we're going to change the number. Actually, we're not going to use this piece for this assignment, so I'm going to start just by erasing that sheet number because we're going to build this up over time. I don't know how many sheets we have, so we'll just delete it. But I do want to change this to A-1.1. So that should look like that. And then once that is all set, that you've essentially finished this drawing, I'm going to save it, because it's a good point to save. And of course, you'll want to print this out in the class. Now, each classroom has a different printer, but if we were to sort of look at that quickly, see, it's going to tell me that I don't have the right printer set up, but that's okay. I'll hit print. You're going to have to select the printer based on the classroom you're on there. It's going to already be set up to 11 by 17, so you should be good. It should already be set up to layout there, so you should be good. Scale 1:1 and monochrome. These are all settings that are good for this assignment. They might change for other ones, but they're good for now. So you would say OK to print. I'm not going to print because I'm not at a printer, so I'll hit cancel instead, and the assignment is done. Good luck. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and I'll see you in the next series of videos, which will be the second floor plan, I believe.